Beautiful
Good.
colors.
Oh, thank you. Well,
Love
I
your
thought we were
blouse.
talking about emotions today. So I thought,
Ah.
let's just make it a little colorful because emotions are colorful.
What does that say about my emotions?
That means
I'm
you're
wearing
dark and
black.
dreary, and I am feeling them all at the same time. It's a festive colors.
Fair enough.
One of us has to bring color into the relationship.
That's right.
So, hello everyone in the creative mind community, and we are excited about the topic today, which is emotions, and it's the creative and destructive power of emotions.
Yeah.
They can be our best friend or our worst enemy. And we are feeling people, and everything that we do in life is matched with an emotion. It gives life meaning. It helps us fall in love. And so we're going to talk about how they work, why we can't control them sometimes, and the transformative power that they hold.
Before we get started, can I do a little intention?
You sure can.
Thank you.
Let's do that.
Yes. So the intention, like last time, is that the spirit leads us from the unreal to the real,
Mm-hmm.
from darkness to light,
Mm-hmm.
and from death to immortality. Now, what that means is that we essentially live in this unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's not happening, it's happening, but it's not the absolute reality. And through this work, we want to move to the reality, the absolute reality, which is spiritual essence, a consciousness essence. The second part is that we're in ignorance often, not of the physical world, but of the deeper spiritual laws that are operating in the universe. So we want to always be moving towards that higher understanding. And then thirdly, that we want to move from the limitation of just being a physical, biological being to that broader concept of ourselves as conscious beings, right, as cosmic participants. So with that, then let's get going.
And so what do emotions have to do with spirituality? Because I think when I first started doing personal development, I would think that emotions were more human and we don't really need them if we transcend and become spiritual beings, and we don't have to deal with emotions and we can just float on our little, that's what I thought, float on my little cloud and put myself in my bubble of love and not have to deal with them. But we do have to deal with them because it's what makes life worth living and gives life meaning. So let's just talk about what emotions are to begin with. Like, what are they? Why do we have them? Biologically, we have these sensations in our body that create something that happens in our brain that says this is sadness, this is love, this is anger, this is frustration, this is fear. How does that whole mechanism work in one sentence,
right?
One or two sentences?
Well, it is a big topic, and it's been ignored a lot in psychology and science. We like to think of ourselves as these rational beings, almost like Mr. Spock, or Data, that operate on pure reason, and that's just not so. The research shows we sense the world with our whole body, our whole being, and it's an emotional experience that we're having of the world. When we feel good, when we whatever has meaning for us, we're experiencing it through the emotions, right?
So I know that you and I talked about this before, and if you think about your life and you think about, one of the things we're going to do in the retreat is look at our life and where the emotions have been kind of anchored in. And if you look at your life, every memory you have is connected to an emotion. So it's hard to remember things that are, you go to the Starbucks and nothing happens and you leave and you just kind of forget about it. But you go to the Starbucks and someone bumps into you and spills coffee all over you and doesn't apologize, and you're in the car and you talk about them every day, and that's an event. And so it's stored and it's anchored in. And so our life is about those anchoring emotional events that help maybe define us, tell us where we are at, what we're doing, and then the narrative around that. So it really is, if we don't remember things that don't have an emotion.
Yeah, so it's a good idea to start at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
when we're born.
Mm.
Our first emotional experience is that attachment that we have with our mother,
Mm. Yeah.
right? It's the beginning of psychology, really. If you think about what Freud was doing, and Jung and Adler, they were looking at this initial template of our relationship with our mother, and emotionally what it meant for the rest of our lives. And we know it still holds pretty much. The more current research and neuroscience indicates that we do have like this emotional template that's laid down very early on,
Mm.
and we're primed for it even before we're able to reason and think through and really use our cognition. We're able to sense the world emotionally, and we're able to sense, and we're designed to sense each other's emotions
Mm-hmm.
intuitively. And it's a much older brain structure. It's called the limbic system, and it tunes us into each other's vibration, in essence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our emotional well-being, or illness, or sense of discomfort. We
Mm-hmm.
pick that up intuitively.
Mm. And then we end up, for me, the emotions played a role in love. I mean, if we think about looking for love, it was always, as I grew up, I always went for the guy that I felt chemistry with. And so if I had this emotional state that arose in me, and then I was thinking, well, must be the one. He must be someone I should marry because he gives me this feeling of love. And all of us can relate. I know you're out there. That it's
Mm.
often not a rational decision. It's, why did I fall for the guy who lives 3,000 miles away, who tells me he doesn't want a commitment, but I'm still it's like you still like drawn. And what I noticed is that I was, the feeling I had with that I identified with love was
Mm.
longing. So it was a longing. It was like a romantic longing. And so that is what I always went, it would always match up with people that kept me longing. It wasn't, and then when someone was nice to me and someone wanted a relationship and they were longing for me, it was like it didn't match. It was like oil and water. I was like, what? It was almost like a painful to feel that loved and adored by a man. Like it was just not painful in like a conscious way, but more like discomfort. And so we end up going through life looking for partners, even looking for careers that match our emotional template. And we think we're making choices, but that emotion is doing it. And that's kind of
Yeah.
what I've learned over the years before I met you is the flirfiness. I'd be like, that was my gauge. That was a really wrong instrument to
It's not a
use.
good way to do your
Yeah,
life.
yeah. But you don't want to also be too ultra rational where you're thinking, well, I just want someone who's good on paper. I've had clients who've come to me and they're like, I married the right guy that my family liked, that looked good. He fit in with my life. He made rational sense, but I have no emotion. And so you don't want that either. You don't want completely logical and you don't want completely irrational.
Well, going back to the attachment theory.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens early on is you have to answer these two questions. Am I worthy of love?
Mm.
And can I trust other people with
Mm.
my emotions?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, can I open up? Can I be intimate? And these are unconsciously answered. We
Mm-hmm.
answer these questions unconsciously by the experiences that we have in
Mm.
early life. So very early on, we make that decision. Am I worthy of love? And can I trust others with my emotions? And based on that, then we go off into life and try our hand at it, without most people, because they're unconscious of these answers or these
Mhm.
questions in them. uh, they end up, or we end up, making a mess of it,
Mhm.
like I did. I mean, it was rough going because I wasn't aware of these, even after I knew psychology,
Mm.
because psychology was so focused on the cognition. Like, there was a
Mhm.
cognitive revolution going on
Yeah.
when I was in school. It was, the whole emphasis was, can we understand how the brain processes information
Mhm.
and make sense of the world through these kind of cognitive processes? Nothing about the emotions.
Yeah, I was even in hypnotherapy, it was all about thinking,
Hmm.
changing the beliefs. But I mean, there was some emotion there too, but it was really more of the thoughts. Your thoughts create your life. And we see
Yeah.
that all the time. Your thoughts create your life. And your thoughts, yes, they do create, but you can't have a thought without an emotion. And the thought is conscious, but the emotion is unconscious. And many times the ego uses thought as rationalization,
Mm.
justification to push down emotion and to avoid us feeling. So the ego is very clever. It loves to use our thinking rational mind to avoid feeling uncomfortable. So we tend to justify why that, kind of that person hurt me or left me. Well, I have to justify in my mind. They must be a bad person or they must have done something wrong. And that suppresses that feeling of rejection. And so,
Suppression, yeah, repression, we know leads to a lot of the problems with health,
mm,
a lot of depression, anxiety, because we're not processing the emotions properly. We're repressing them, pushing them away, trying to get rid of them, or simply pathologizing them.
mhm.
Like, if I have these emotions, that means there's something wrong with
Like
me.
feeling shame, guilt,
Yeah,
anger, all those things, jealousy, they're all emotions that you know, we had them for a reason, for
that's right.
survival, and they do serve us because if we didn't have guilt, we'd do terrible things to each other. If we didn't have shame, we would hurt others without any shame, people that are shameless. If we didn't have jealousy, maybe there's that kind of like wanting what other people have or recognizing that someone has something
Mm.
good, that it can be a very creative emotion. But what happens is that we label them as good or bad, and then we don't want to feel the bad, and we only want to feel the good. And the way we process it is that the external is giving us the emotion versus we can generate the emotion within ourselves. So there's a lot. I mean, we can go on and on. There's so many layers to this, but let's talk about this destructive power. Like if we just in general, if we
Mm.
don't understand our emotional life, we try to intellectualize it too much. What happens to and
Well,
like
yeah, in essence, the emotions will have their day, whether we like it or not, in one way or another.
Mhm,
So we either learn to work with them and befriend them, in essence, and
mhm,
really coordinate with them, or they're going to take their revenge on us,
mhm,
meaning they're going to sabotage our work, our relationships, blow up in the moment that really counts.
mhm,
We're going to trip and fall or falter or have a moment of doubt
mhm,
or anger, because the unconscious is really powerful.
mm,
It's very powerful. If we think back to, okay, what was going on when we were kids, we were reading the family situation emotionally and absorbing it, and our mind was keeping track. What does this mean for me out in the world?
mhm.
And I
And then
have,
we replay it out in the world.
yes, so that emotional template then becomes the way we see the world. if
Mm,
if we don't revisit it, if we're
mm,
not able to examine it and bring it to awareness.
mhm,
Now, it's not about just an intellectual examination and thinking, well, if I know all this stuff, I'm clear.
mhm,
You have to really process them. In
mhm.
other words, you have to be able to feel the emotions, and It's almost like if it's pure energy, these emotions are psychological, emotional energy.
They're fuel, you say. They're like our fuel.
They're the fuel, the inspiration, the passion for our work, for our relationships. But if we repress them and we haven't really understood what they are, and we're misreading them,
Mhm.
that's when they trip us up.
And don't you think that this world, the way our world is worked, is this very masculine, active world that we're not really, people don't talk about emotions. They don't talk about how you
Mm,
feel, or it's just be happy, just be happy. Don't be depressed. And a lot of times it's kind of like in the corporate world, it's very, don't process emotions. And maybe now I think people are becoming more woke, but I remember it's like, you just make all these rational decisions, like rationality and logic seem to be more powerful than someone, a lot of you talk about being empaths and
mm,
sensitive and emotional. And it's like pushed aside that because you can feel things and sense things in people, that's not a power, but it's the intellect that has the power. So we culturally, we all of us have in the West have really discounted the power of emotions, and it's almost like, uh, don't go there. It's not healthy, and we don't talk about those things. Those are soft, mushy stuff we don't want to get into. And when I was first starting doing love coaching, my coach asked me. She said, "I want you to just do a search on Match for the word love." And no, there was no one put love in their profile. It's almost like it's one thing that we want to have is love, and no one's even said I want love, or I want to feel love, or I want to meet my love. Very, very rarely. So and then we look when we're searching for a partner, it's very rational. Like, do they fit in with my life? Are they attractive? Do they, fit in, check all the boxes? And then it becomes this very mechanical thing. And then we have hope in the beginning, and then it gets squashed, and then we just kind of lose that oomph and that passion to find our partner. So motion is really, really a key to us going for what we want, but we have to know how to use them.
yeah, if you think about inspiration, passion for
Mm.
your projects,
Mm.
your relationships,
Mhm.
self-love, right?
Yeah.
Self-respect, the ability to really take yourself seriously and passionately
Mhm.
work towards your ideals. You need to be able to access the power of the emotions.
Mm.
If you have trouble, then all those things are going to falter, and they're going to be lacking in that essence, that passion for life that we need to bring to things.
Mhm.
Now, if you look at the recent history, modern history has been really defined by the failure of institutions.
Mhm.
So the church has definitely let people down. Educational systems have failed. The government, it's failing essentially in every way. And so it's so important, even now, even more than ever, that we as individuals are able to really manage our minds and really think through things
Mhm.
in both a balanced way, not only using logic, but the emotional uh, power of compassion,
Mhm.
of empathy, like you're saying.
Well, even just the idea of anger, a lot of people think anger is it just can be very destructive. And I see anger as unexpressed passion. So it's a passion, because passion is anger. It's actually the same thing. It's just a different word to express it. When it's anger, it's feeling powerless. It's
Mhm.
feeling frustrated. It's a stuck feeling. So if we're holding anger, we're not really we want to we want to destroy things, we want to tear things down, we want to tear people down, we want to harm others, but when you transmute it into passion, it becomes love, and it becomes a force of, I have power to change, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm not happy about where things are, and I'm passionate about change. And that is such a difference. And I see that's what's happening, with the movement that's happening now. You see people they're peaceful protesters, but they're angry, but they're passionate. It's not this destructive force. I mean, there was a little destructive force. I don't know if it had to do with the peaceful people. We're definitely not a part of it, but it's that kind of, how can we use it in a creative way versus a destructive way? How can we get in touch with our emotions? And one of the things I love that you said a couple of years ago, we were teaching a class on emotions, and you said, well, they're like children. They're like tiny, younger parts of ourselves. The emotions, yeah. The emotions are like children. You don't want to drive, but you can't stick them in the trunk. You have to deal with them in the car, and they're climbing over the seats, and they're telling you what to do, and they're having upsets, and it's about they're kind of wild in a way until we understand them, and we don't want to tame them where we dampen them and dilute them,
right.
and or push them away or suppress only the ones that are uncomfortable. But we want to be able to use their creative energy, and that's really the idea of. And when you do that, you actually are changing your emotional template in your mind. You're not acting from the rigid, conditioned judgments of those emotions and those responses to the world.
Yeah, another big factor is the idea of the paradigm. If we're operating from a materialistic paradigm and we see the body as simply a biological machine that we inhabit for a while and then abandon, we're missing the point. But if we see it as a conscious universe, everything is arising from consciousness, including our bodies and including the world. And everything is alive, and everything is connected. Everything is a kind of swimming together in one big ocean of consciousness. So then you're understanding emotions in a clearer way. It's not just about your individual body expressing these powerful emotions, but it's sensing the world in its aliveness, that it's connecting us literally to each other, to what's going on, to nature. And if we lose that connection, that's when we feel angry, and we feel frustrated, and we feel depressed and anxious. That connection is vital for our really our way of being in the world, because it ultimately, the Upanishads say that everything we're experiencing is us. No matter how remote it appears, how distant, it is us. It is our own awareness, our own consciousness. And the emotions connect us. They give us a direct experience of that. It's not just a logical
It's a way
construct.
to kind of experience the world versus just watching distantly the world go by and different activities happen.
Yeah.
It's a way for us to drink up the light and dark, the good and bad, the battles of life and the drama of life, and experience it all the edges of it.
That's right. And for love and relationships, like the work you were talking about, it's so important because when people are in tune with their emotions, people pick it up. Emotions.
You feel open. You feel more open to someone when they're talking to you.
That's right. That's right. And it's a very powerful experience. You're attracted to those people.
It almost feels like when you talk to people, and for just go back to dating for a minute, or even if you're a coach and you're trying to get clients, or you're in business and you're trying to make business connections, your team at work, when you're talking on that logical level, it feels this kind of void between people. It's like almost like you're at a hand's length, kind of being very practical. But when you're really connected to someone, a friendship, a family, I think that's why family feels so connected, because we are more openly emotional, usually with our family. Well,
we hope.
We hope. But it's, someone you really trust that you can connect with. And in dating, you kind of, if you're on a date and you're going, so what do you do for a living? But when you talk about something you're passionate about and they're passionate about it, it's like a connection that happens that's much deeper then, well, it sounds like I like to go on, go on the lake and fishing, and so do I, and I'm an outdoorsy person, and you're not talking about the emotional part of it. Or I always find that when you're just vulnerable about how you feel, like, I'm feeling a little nervous right now. Oh, I'm nervous too. It's just a way to connect. It's a way to kind of connect on an emotional level. And we're, I think it's lost in a lot of society. It's like, don't talk about how you feel.
You're right. That's what I was mentioning. The institutions, often the institutions were ways for us to channel and kind of acknowledge those different platforms that we were reaching. So let's say the coming out initiation of a young woman, she reached a certain age, and so there was a grand ball or a ceremony of some kind that acknowledged that she's now an adult. She's now a woman and has left the child behind. Those were important milestones in people's lives, that the ritual served as a kind of a bringing it to social consciousness, right? That this was happening.
Individuation almost, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You're becoming your own woman.
And now, with the failure of those institutions, there are no mechanisms for people to undergo those processes. So everybody's kind of left on their own to do their own emotional work somehow.
And our parents didn't teach us. Their parents didn't. No one. I mean, we basically taught to, don't cry in public. Be good to other people. Be kind. Don't be angry. Be nice, and don't be too pushy. Most of us. Some people are taught to be pushy. I don't know, but it's that kind of like not acknowledging how each other feel. And isn't it funny that when you go to therapy, that's the question. Like, how does that make you feel? It's like, why do they ask that? Because most people don't even ask themselves, how does this making me feel? And so a lot of people confuse that feeling with intuition. A lot of times they if you are going on your emotional template, like for me, that flirty feeling, that longing, I was like intuitive. I thought it was my intuition saying, this is my soulmate. And we end up kind of having these superstitious ways we work with emotions and what they mean. And they're not really truly our deeper self guiding. It's our ego guiding. And the ego is very clever. It likes to pretend it's a spiritual guru and it's telling us things, and it's telling us to move away from things that are good for us sometimes because it's new and different.
And
that's and it's locked in emotionally.
Yeah. What you mean by flirty feeling is chemistry, right?
Yeah. That kind of like butterflies and that, but it's that longing, like, oh, like I have this, I really like him and I feel connected and he's so fun. And, there's something about him that I'm drawn to. And that kind of romantic chemistry, that something, but it was a longing for me. That's how it felt for me. For other people, it may be different. It may be someone who compliments you a lot and you might have chemistry with that person, whatever it is. For me, it was longing.
Yeah, there's always a sense of exhilaration and excitement.
Yeah.
Almost like you're entering into a new psychological, emotional space that you've never been in before. And so it's incredible. It's that's why we crave love, and we're designed to seek it out. The problem, what we see, is that because of the conditioning, that emotional template that is unconscious, often we have that emotional chemistry with the wrong person, because it matches essentially, if we answered the question, are others worthy of trust? And if our answer is no,
we're going to match up with someone who isn't worthy of trust.
We're going to match up. We're going to have that chemistry with people that match that are emotionally unavailable or emotionally in turmoil and conflicted. And to us, it feels, well, I'm going with my feelings. I'm going with my instinct, my gut feelings, or my intuition. But it's leading us in the wrong direction, essentially.
Also, worthiness, I found, like, if I look back at the men in my life that I dated, that I was so infatuated with, but I was coming from a place of I'm not good enough and I'm unworthy and I'm not that great. And this person's going to come in and make me feel great if he loves me back. And I was like so into them. I was like a mess. I would like be so like obviously interested and open, and what I found is that, looking back, they didn't feel worthy of love. So when I was pursuing them or being this like adoring of them, they couldn't accept
Mm.
that imprint as well. So my unworthiness and their unworthiness kind of clashed. And I saw this actually with a relationship where he was pursuing me for a while and I was like, I don't know. And then I decided I liked him and then he moved away. So it was like we were both felt unworthy, and we were playing this game, and it was like, whoever's pursuing the other one moves away. And that's a lot of what happens in relationships, is that many of the people we're attracted to have the same emotional template, but we
Right.
express it differently at different times on the surface. And it looks like, oh, he's confident because he's Mr. Cool, but actually he's thinking unconsciously, he's rejecting love as well. He's rejecting someone that can love him.
It's a mirror
Yeah,
image.
yeah. And so I think a lot of women think, oh, I have to be more confident and then I'll attract someone who loves me back. But it's actually, it is true. Like, you have to love yourself, but on a deep level. But don't make those guys that reject you, don't think of them as, oh, they're so confident and great and I wasn't good enough. It's more, they felt the same way, because someone who's great and loving, or loves themselves, would want someone who loves them. And I think that's what happened when I met you, is that you were sending me poems and all these adorable things that I would have ran away a million miles in the beginning, but I was ready and open for love. So it changed that dynamic. My emotional template had changed. So I was able to let someone in. That's why I wrote the book, Let Love In, because it's really about letting someone in. And emotionally, if we're not okay with our own emotions, why would we? It's like bringing someone into a house that you have this like
Mm.
closet in the back that has all the emotions that you don't like to look at yourself. And you're thinking, I'm going to bring someone in and they're going to open up that closet and let, Pandora's box out. So we have to take care of our whole, if we feel comfortable with our own self and our own emotions, we can let someone in so much easier than if we're defended and hiding things from ourselves. And that's what we're really doing in the emotional template. It's hiding certain aspects or things we don't want to
Yeah.
feel, right?
Well, Jung says that the best time to work on a relationship is before you get into one.
Yes.
Well, and that's what he's saying, that you need to work on yourself first, and prepare. Now, you don't have to be completely
Enlightened.
perfect or anyway, yeah, or
Although I
enlightened.
wasn't I wrong?
Of course, you
Just
were,
kidding.
but you were on the path, right?
Mm.
You were seeking,
Mm.
and that's what counts. Is that we intuitively, emotionally connect with people that are also on the same path.
Yes, and you know what I realized after, like the year before I met you, I went to hypnotherapy school and I was really kind of stepping into my own and I was really changing and, starting my own
Mm.
little practice and getting out of the corporate world. And then I noticed that men that weren't ready to like grow with me or grow at all would just fall away right away. They were like, I don't know about that. I mean, I even had
Yeah.
someone say, oh, your stuff is the way you think is a little too much for me. It was like, you're too much. And it doesn't match anymore. And it was like, oh, okay, that doesn't match anymore. I want someone who I can have deep, interesting conversations with, that I'm not
Yeah.
afraid to feel or not afraid to let me feel these feelings. Because I think ultimately we want love, we want to feel love, but we're terrified of it because what we thought was love has given us heartache, but it's not really love. So our emotional template is kind of fixed to reject
Mm.
love in a way, reject closeness, reject intimacy, because what we learned is what we labeled love is, for many of us, has been let down and painful.
Yes. The those stages of growth that I was talking about, definitely reaching, let's say, a level where you're ready to be intimate with
Mm-hmm.
another person in a serious way, to be a couple, to be
Mm-hmm.
married, or at least to live together and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It is another stage, a
Mm-hmm.
completely other different stage, because now it's not just you. It's not just the ego
Mm.
existing and surviving and doing its thing. Now you have to consider another person.
Mhm.
And really psychologically, emotionally, you have to let go of that ego attachment that you have to yourself,
Mm.
to your way of life, and your
It's like a control that you have to let
yeah,
go of a little bit.
yeah, which is
You're not
scary.
ultimately the ego's control.
Yeah, and that this gets to what you were saying, because there are very powerful defense mechanisms against letting go of the ego.
Mhm. Mhm.
The whole idea in the beginning is to create a very cohesive, powerful sense of self that will allow you to face life's
Mm.
challenges.
Mhm.
Now, all of a sudden, there's this other person
Mhm.
that you have feelings towards, and that love is asking you to let go of all that
Mm.
ego attachment, ego
Yeah.
buildup, and it's not easy. That's why it requires commitment. It requires a maturity, and again, understanding the emotions. If you don't understand your emotions, then you're confused by the whole process.
Well, the emotional template will always lead you astray in love. When you first called me, the phone rang 3 times before I picked up because the first response was fear. Like, "Oh my god, he's actually calling me. I gotta call him." And then I picked up, but my ego was like sense that the gig is gonna be up soon, you're gonna have to let go. This is something there must have been a powerful, force with you, but it
The
was
force
interest
is with you.
but to be wise enough to know that that's the ego, not
Mm.
and what we tend to do if we're not aware of our emotional template or understand how we work and how we've been conditioned to operate, that we will pay attention to that feeling versus the higher intuition. And so we want to be able to master our intuition so we can use the emotions to live, but not let us make our choices for us all the time.
Yeah, that's a
And
good
I
way to
think
put it.
the emotion, we're just kind of on autopilot with the emotions, and we want to grow it. So what does it take to transform it? For me, it was always putting light around it and getting rid of the negative emotions and getting them away. But I always found that, well, anger still found me and grief still, these emotions don't go away. They're part of our human makeup. We can't get rid of them, so we have to deal with them. We have to understand that they're there for a reason. They're not
Mm-hmm.
um, not everything happens for a reason, but they're there for a reason. There's a reason why we have guilt. There's a reason why we have fear. If we didn't have all these emotions, we wouldn't be able to survive. So, first of all emotions are good. They have a good intention, and second of all, that the way they've been conditioned in us through the template has been very limited, and so we want to live beyond that limitation. And so we would have to learn to understand them versus get rid of them or suppress them or
Yeah,
cover them up.
yeah.
If
I'd say the first step is to really have an understanding of what emotions are.
Mhm.
Uh, they're not pathology, meaning the doesn't mean there's something wrong with you
Mhm.
because you feel guilt or
Mhm.
shame, or your mind holds on to past experiences. That's
Mhm.
what it's supposed to do.
Mhm.
It's supposed to do that so that you can learn from past experiences. But if there's no mechanism, no way for you to process those emotions, then they remain like this. And they remain like in a primitive state in your body.
They almost become a burden,
Yeah,
like, to feel, and then
that's
we
right.
end up like, I don't wanna deal with them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they disrupt the natural flow of energy in your mind body,
Mm.
and that's when people get sick or depressed or
Mhm.
anxious. And so the first stage is to learn about them, to understand what they are, and then some mechanisms, some tools to be able to process them,
Mhm.
to work with them. And the approach is essentially kind of a friendly approach.
Mhm.
If you think about long lost friends or relatives that you haven't seen in a long time, you want to invite them in. You're curious as to what's been going on with them.
Mhm.
What do they have to teach you? what's their experience. And emotions are like that. Rumi has that beautiful poem of the guest room, or
Mhm.
the guest house, or something like that.
Yeah.
And he says, whatever emotion knocks on the door, invite it in.
Mhm.
Ask it, what's going on?
Mhm.
Why are you here? What is your message to me?
I love, Jung had said once, and I read this recently, he said, "What has come alive in me that has called my attention?"
Hmm.
And so it's like this kind of something, like the emotion has a story, and it's alive, and it's a part of you, and it's calling for you. It's calling to say, "Hey, there's something here." It's the way it's we have this kind of filter of how we experience the outer world, and it's kind of a gauge of
Mm,
that. And it's to understand the world, we have to understand what's going on in ourselves. And then that projection will change if you understand the film that's being processed inside.
yeah.
And then what happens is, if you don't look at the emotions, the ones that you reject will end up showing up in other people. So if you reject anger, you're going to see a lot of angry people out there, and you're going to say, wow, there's so many angry people around. I'm such a nice person. But a lot of our clients have said, my persona is this nice, pleasing person, and I have this raging bitch inside of me that I didn't know. And it was like all this anger that I haven't dealt
Mm,
with. And so it can become destructive. So we have to, when we do feel angry or someone triggers us, we have to say, what is that about me? What is this showing me about my mind? What is this showing me about me? What can I learn from this? And like you said, that openness, that welcoming, less judgment, more a curiosity, instead of this harsh, like, I got to fix this. This is uncomfortable. I got to fix it. It's more like, I'm willing to be uncomfortable for a little bit so I can see what's in here. And when I've welcomed emotions this way, it's been very transformational for me. It's been amazing
yeah.
to see, oh my God, my whole life has been about avoiding this feeling. And it's just a sensation in the body that we're afraid of, this tension in our chest. So I'm tense in my chest, but our mind makes this whole big story, and it's going to be like
Mm,
this forever, and you're going to be alone forever, and you're never going to get what you want. And then it just keeps building, and you think you're afraid of the ghosts that your mind creates, these future problems that it spins from that emotion. And if we can just kind of get inside, we can start directing that narrative in a different way.
yeah. And so those cliches about loving yourself and all that,
Mm,
they're true. But you have to approach it in this knowing way, in this friendly way. Even the difficult emotions like anger,
mm,
you have to be able to face it, in a sense,
mm,
to invite it in,
mm,
and not get caught up in it at the same time. We know the power of this kind of meta awareness,
mm,
where we're looking at our mind, not just our thoughts but our emotions, from that higher vantage point,
mm,
where we're able uh, to really let them into the mind, but with the understanding that they're not they don't define us. They're
mhm,
not us.
mhm.
The thoughts, the emotions, they'll come and go
Like weather.
like weather, but the awareness that's there, the true mind, the true self in our mind, the witness mind,
Mm,
is able to withstand whatever we throw at it.
mhm,
It won't be damaged, it won't be overwhelmed. uh, and that's the power that we have. The secret power, the secret weapon that we have, is that the higher self in us is not damaged by any past experiences.
mhm,
And a lot of people buy into that story, that pathology, that if something traumatic happened to me in my past, I'm damaged forever.
mhm.
That I'm going to live,
I'm broken in some
yeah,
way.
with this shame or guilt or anger forever. And that's just not true.
Mm,
The highest truth says that the self is indestructible. It cannot be burned. It cannot be cut. It cannot be damaged in any way.
and you are that self.
Yeah.
One thing too I wanted to mention is, a lot of times we've been so conditioned to keep our emotions, like, don't be too happy because you look crazy. And don't be too sad because
Who
you look
says that?
crazy. Well, like these people that are like over the top and it's just like too much. Like they're too happy all
Mm.
the time but you could tell that they're kind of, it's their persona.
Mm.
And so we have this kind of like, it's normal for us to kind of feel that mediocre numbness, that life of quiet desperation. And then I think we forget that when we're trying to create something in our life, whether we want love or success, that we forget to engage the emotion with it. So
Mm.
finding love, to fall in love with love, to start a business, to fall in love with why you're doing that business. I know for me, if I get too logical and think about steps and marketing and business and numbers, you can forget and disconnect from the emotional part of the what you're doing and how you're helping people. And so when we think about falling in love with someone, think about the benefits that that other person is going to feel,
Mm.
the love that they're going to feel for you, that they get to experience as well. So by you being open, you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping someone else have an experience of love, because there's two of you that are going to experience it. And that's a beautiful thing. So falling in love with that idea that you're bringing more love into the world and being passionate about it, passionate enough that, like we say, emotion overrides logic. But if a passion is strong enough, it'll override all the obstacles as well that your mind
Mm.
puts up to create. So it could be destructive if you let it drive and keep you in your patterns. But the emotion is also the fuel to break free. So to passion, incitement, engagement, love, joy, all those things can catapult us and change us and transform us into a new way of being. So we have to remember that it's not only just coping with them and dealing with them and sitting with them, which is part of it. It's being friendly to them, but also using them as fuel. And so that's where I think the challenge is, that how do we invite the emotions in without letting them take over, but then, and how do we rein them in and use them? In the Upanishads, they talk about the chariot, and that the horses are the emotions, the senses.
The horses are the senses. Yeah. The reins are the mind, or is the mind. The emotions, I think, would be the passion that the mind has for objects.
Hmm.
It desires things in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with desire, but when you don't understand its meaning and its proper use, then the senses run away with your mind,
Mm-hmm.
and they're chasing after external things in the world.
Like I was going, just circling back to the longing, is I wanted love. I wanted that experience of love. I was very romantic. I felt like I was so emotional and open and ready, and but I was afraid to really, the longing was what I was comfortable with, is the longing for love versus the
Mm.
actual receiving it. And so it could trick us into thinking, well, I'm feeling love, I'm falling in love, I fall in love every week, with a different person, and I'm always in love with someone, so I'm ready. And it's not, it's how is it love, or is it an ego longing, and like an attachment to
Mm-hmm.
when I can get that person, I feel better about myself, versus feeling that love within myself. And I think right before I met you, I got to the point where I thought, I love who I am. Like that was the first time I think I really felt that. Like I love who I am, even if I'm not in a relationship right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, I love myself, but more like in a deep knowing way that I have something really valuable that I can bring to a relationship. That for me is like,
Yeah.
I'm an interesting person. I'm spiritual. I grow. I work on myself. Why wouldn't I want someone like that for me? Like if I was a guy, I would think I'm a great catch, and that coming from that place of you're bringing something whole and alive in you into a
Yeah.
relationship.
And that's what emotions give us, is the knowing.
Yes.
Let's say the cognition gives us the understanding,
Mm,
the concept, the conceptual framework. But the emotion is the knowing that you're there,
mm,
right? That you've arrived there.
mm.
That's the power of the emotion. Thank you for all the great questions and
Mm.
hanging out with us for a while. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone, and have a great day.
Stay well.
Bye-bye.